Hey folks, welcome back to Learn from Dad. I'm James. Today we're going to talk about how to adjust tire pressure. Specifically, we're going to be using my truck tires, but this might also be equally applicable to a trailer or maybe even your bicycle. So follow along. Now, some of the key things we're going to be talking about are the specific tools that you'll use and also the technique and the philosophy behind adjusting the tire pressure. And also stick around till the end for a couple special bonus tips that might help you in specific situations. Now be aware when you go to fill tires, you will run into some different valve stem types, but traditional vehicles, trailers, and even a lot of bicycles use what's called a Schrader valve. So that's what we're going to be demonstrating here today. Now we're also not going to be touching on a lot of details on how to check pressure and all the things that are around it. I already did a video you can check out over here and learn more about that. So let's jump into increasing or decreasing or adjusting your tire pressure. Now I like to run my tire pressure at 70 psi, and you can see on my gauge we're down just below 60, and on my dash it actually does say 58 psi. So first fundamental concept, to adjust tire pressure, you need to understand that pressure wants to move from one that is higher to one that is lower. So for example, if I have a tire that has 80 psi or equivalent in kilopascals, if I open that valve to atmosphere, it's going to vent out because it's transferring from a higher location or measurement to one of lower. Or else, if I have an air compressor that has, say, 100 psi and a tire that has 60, the air compressor is going to overcome the tire pressure and move air volume into the tire. Now, for us to be able to transfer a higher pressure air into the tire, I need a few tools. So I've got my air hose hooked up to my compressor, which is regulated at 100 psi, like I had mentioned. And then I need an air chuck. So I've got a couple different styles. This is a longer one that can do this side or this side. Again, these are all set up for Schrader valve, which is normal on a traditional vehicle or trailer tire. There's simple ones like this. There's simple ones like this, but with a locking mechanism so I can insert it on and release it, and it will stay. This is good for filling a tire that needs a large volume of air and it's going to take a period of time. You don't have to hold it against the tire valve stem. So we're going to use the traditional simple style. And again, what we're doing here is allowing the valve plunger within the chuck to push in the valve plunger or the core of the valve stem. So if I push this with my thumb, I can let the air come out. So if you think about that, as this pin pushes in that pin, it opens both valves and it seals against the valve stem and allows air to transfer. So if you are pushing in and you hear that, you're not pushing in hard enough to create the seal. Now likewise, when I push in, I'm going to listen. I can hear that air transferring into the tire. So as I listened for that, the question then becomes, how long should I hold this on to get the right amount of air pressure in? And the answer to that question is there's no good exact rule. It depends on how big that tire is and how much air volume you're trying to put in there to change that pressure. So if I have, for example, this truck tire, which needs another about 10 or 12 psi, to get that, there's a very large volume of air that needs to go in there. I'm going to have to hold that for a period of time, stop, and then check the pressure again and see how close I am. And I'm going to do that probably 2 or 3 times until I get it to where I want to be. If you have something like my son's scooter, which has very small tires, this is going to take very little air volume. So this is a little trickier. One quick push on that and release is going to fill that tire up very quickly. So it really depends on what kind of a tire size you are dealing with. So let's press and hold for a little while, and then we'll check it. So that was about 12 seconds in real time. Now let's check. And we have come up to about 65 psi, so we need a little more air. So that was about another 10 seconds. Let's check it. And we are just below 70 psi, so one more cycle will get us there. And we're right at 70 psi where I want to be. Now, some air chucks that you find at a gas station or even some shops might have, I just don't particularly have one, will have a gauge built in so you can pull that trigger, allow the pressure and air volume to flow in. You can release the trigger and immediately see a reading. pull the trigger again and fill it some more. Those are really handy. I just don't happen to have one. Now, what happens if you get too much air in? So let's blow this tire up a little further than we're supposed to, and then I'll show you how to release some air out. So I intentionally overfilled this tire by about 10 psi. So we're sitting at 80 and I want it at 70. So how do we do it? Well, you have to open the valve stem core to allow that pressure that is high to escape to a place that is low, such as atmosphere. So all I have to do is open that valve core. Now, there's a couple different ways to do it. When you have tire check tools like this pencil gauge, you'll notice that on the back they typically have this little round nub, and that is intentionally meant to press that core and open it and release some pressure. Now, if you don't have one of those gauges, you can use anything to open that valve core. So here's a small screwdriver that I can use to push that valve. Now, if you don't have a screwdriver, you probably have a fingernail. So as you can see, anything can open that valve to allow that higher pressure to escape out to atmosphere to lower that tire pressure. So I promised a couple bonus tips, and those really revolve around how do I let air out of the tire, especially if I have a tire that's very large, like on a piece of agricultural equipment that I work on or construction equipment. Those tires have really large volumes. Now, to get that air out, I don't want to sit and have to hold that gauge for a period of time. So let's look at a couple tricks. So one thing you can do is actually use one of these locking tools, but leave it disconnected from the hose, which is open to atmosphere. That's going to allow me to snap that on and just leave it and let that air pressure drain out. Now, on something like a vehicle tire, that's going to work great. Now, when it comes to an agricultural tire or something that's very large, what you're more likely going to do as a mechanic is pull out your core removal tool and actually take and spin the valve core out. And what that will do is let that air volume bleed out really fast. And then return the valve core back in once you get it down closer to where you think it should be. Now, one last time, you always want to check your tire pressure to make sure you're where you want to be. Now, remember, I do have this other video for how to check tire pressure. It talks a lot about the valve types and where you might want to set your tire pressure at, so check that out. But now you know how to increase and decrease your tire pressure to hopefully make them ride more comfortable, give them the longest life. So thanks for watching. Make sure you drop some comments down below, and I will see you on the next video. Okay, buddy, now we can play. Come here.